The sun beat down on the parched earth of the Maasai village, but no heat was as intense as the fire in Emeka's eyes as he watched his beloved, a woman he had sacrificed everything for, walk away. Her footsteps were slow, each one a dagger in his heart, leading her not to him, but to his rival, the wealthy, arrogant Chike. Emeka, a warrior stripped of his title and honor, knew this was the end of his love story, but he also saw the beginning of something else, a silent, simmering war that would leave their village forever changed. He had given up his spear for her smile, his status for her touch, and in return, he received this public, agonizing rejection. Yet, in the finality of this moment, he noticed a flicker of regret in her eyes, a hint of the storm that would soon engulf them all, for her choice was not truly her own. The story of Emeka and Adanna was not one of simple love, but of a bond, forged in the crucible of tradition, and a challenge to the very fabric of their society. It began not in the village circle where young men and women met, but in the hush of the deep, sacred forest. Emeka, a proud and skilled warrior, the kind of man whose footsteps made the lions wary, found Adanna not by accident, but by a destiny whispered on the wind. She was the village chief's daughter, her beauty a legend told in hushed tones, her spirit as untamed as the wild animals he hunted. One afternoon, as Emeka was tracking a gazelle, he stumbled upon her at a hidden spring, her laughter echoing through the trees as she splashed water on a stray monkey. It was a moment of pure, unadulterated joy that captured him completely. From that day, his heart, once dedicated to the protection of his people and the pride of his lineage, now belonged to Adanna. He would leave his warrior duties to bring her rare flowers, tell her tales of his ancestors, and carve her beautiful figurines from the finest wood. Their love was a secret, a thrilling transgression against the unspoken rule that a chief's daughter was to be given to the man who could offer the most cattle, not the man who could offer the most love. This clandestine affair continued for many seasons, growing in a passion that defied the elders' wisdom and the village's strict customs. The day Emeka decided to formally ask for her hand was the day his life changed forever. The chief, a man of tradition and pragmatism, laughed in his face. "You, a mere warrior? What can you offer my daughter that the respected Chike cannot?" Chike, whose herd stretches to the horizon, whose granaries overflow with the harvest of his fields, whose influence is felt in every corner of this land. You offer her a carved wooden bird. The chief's words were a public humiliation, a rejection that stung deeper than any physical wound. Emeka, in his desperation and love, made a fateful declaration. He would give up his warrior title, his spear, and his oath, to work the fields and prove his worth as a provider. He would become a farmer, a man of the soil, for the love of Adanna. This was a shocking and unprecedented choice. To the Maasai, a man's identity was tied to his role as a protector, a warrior. To abandon that was to abandon one's very soul. And so he did. He cast aside his warrior's attire, put down his spear, and took up a hoe. The village watched, some in awe of his devotion, others in scorn of his foolishness. The warriors mocked him, the elders shook their heads, and even Adanna's own mother wept for the shame he was bringing upon their family. But Emeka worked tirelessly. His hands, once calloused from gripping a spear, now blistered from tilling the unforgiving earth. He hoped his sacrifice would show the chief that his love was more valuable than any herd of cattle. But Chike, the chief's favored choice, was not one to be outdone. He saw Emeka's rejection as a personal triumph, a chance to solidify his position as the most powerful man in the village. He began to whisper lies, to sow seeds of doubt. He spoke of Emeka's rashness, his lack of respect for tradition, and his unsuitability as a husband for a chief's daughter. He even went so far as to secretly sabotage Emeka's crops, making his harvest meager and his efforts seem fruitless. The emotional toll on Adanna was immense. Torn between her deep love for Emeka and the overwhelming pressure from her family and her community, her spirit began to break. Her father's constant pleas, her mother's tears, and the veiled threats from Chike's family weighed heavily on her soul. She saw the pain in Emeka's eyes, the deep-seated weariness of a man fighting a battle he was destined to lose. Yet his unwavering hope was what kept her holding on. The day of the final decision arrived, a day shrouded in a thick tension that even the village children could feel. The chief had called a great gathering, a ceremony to announce Adanna's future husband. The villagers gathered in a large circle, the air heavy with anticipation. Emeka, his hands still caked with the soil of his fields, stood on one side, his face a mask of anxious hope. Chike, resplendent in fine robes and surrounded by his entourage, stood on the other. His smile was studied in quiet arrogance. The chief spoke of tradition, of honor, of prosperity, and of the importance of a strong union for the future of their people. Adanna was then brought into the center of the circle, a breathtaking vision of grace and sorrow. The chief gestured for her to make her choice. Emeka's heart pounded against his ribs, a drumbeat of hope and fear. You looked at her, searching for the love that had been their secret for so long. Her gaze, however, was not for him. It was for the ground, for her father, for the faces of the villagers, all of whom seemed to be holding their breath. Finally she turned, her eyes meeting Emeka's for one fleeting, heartbreaking moment. There was a silent apology, a desperate plea, and then she turned away. Her footsteps were the only sound in the tense silence as she walked slowly, deliberately, not toward Emeka and the promise of a love fought for, but toward Chike and the security of a life given. The moment she reached him, Chike's triumphant smile was a cruel blade, and as he took her hand, a single, silent tear fell from Adanna's eye, a tear for the love she was forced to reject, and a tear for the firestorm she knew was now inevitable.